In this lecture, we're going to be looking at, again, just kind of a snapshot of the system, and then looking at some ways, hopefully, to address the problems. The main thing is trying to actually implement some of these things. The Crime of the American Dream book is about 20 years old at this point, as is the Politics of Injustice. So these are not new issues that are being discussed here. So the system is entrenched in a get tough ideology. We talked about that before. Policies are looking at these assumptions that it's immoral or bad people commit crime, that there's a permissive criminal justice system, and again, we've talked about those things are just not the case. These result in calls for more punishment and reduction in social welfare. Again, things that are just not in line with reality. Policy shifts that have been created are based on unsound evidence. New policies that have come out during the 1980s, 1990s, even in the 2000s are unjust, violate civil rights. The policies have created a class war in conjunction with the war on drugs. Well-meaning, I guess, political activism got us here, well-intended political activism, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Without looking at the potential outcomes, people were just sort of living in the immediate. To address this issue, we're going to have political activism, and we've seen that happening in the last few months, and hopefully that continues, that tidal wave of emotion, of working in your own community. Hopefully that continues. Raising awareness about the flawed logic that created the issues, raising awareness about the negative outcomes. Too often those negative outcomes are now being able to be viewed. It's unfortunate that they're happening, but it's good that people are being able to see them. Raise awareness about the lethal and domestic violence and alternative ways to fight them. Trying to address why these things happen instead of just punishing them when they do happen. The ways that they say to address this through social investment and aimed at reducing abject poverty, concentrated disadvantage, inequality. Roll back the entrenchment away from social welfare programs of the 1980s, 1990s. Reducing the stigma of being on part of social welfare programs. There shouldn't be any stigma associated with taking SNAP benefits or receiving unemployment checks. It shouldn't being on the welfare programs shouldn't be an insult, because by making it such, by making people feel bad about that, it might make them less likely to participate in those programs, which is not going to save the government money. It's going to cost money by keeping the people entrenched in poverty. We need to move to a harm reduction model. Abandon zero tolerance policies to drugs. It does not work. You cannot punish people for being a drug addict. Drugs make people feel awesome. That's why they call it getting high. There's not going to be any way to punish someone out of that. By making their life crappier, it just makes them want to get high more. If you make someone and then if you make someone go cold turkey, that can be as dangerous as giving them more of the drugs. Seek to minimize the harm of drugs, but accept use. It's not a criminal justice issue. Drug addiction is a public health issue. Differentiate between drug use and drug abuse. Differentiate between primary and secondary harms of the substance. Addressing the social conditions that lead people to want to take drugs. Or just recognizing that alcohol is a drug. It's one that's much more it's been socially accepted, but as we've seen in the past, it's the most harmful drug in the United States, because people get drunk and they start to drive, or people get drunk and they get in a fight, or people get drunk and they beat someone that is incapable of defending themselves. Also, So the word decriminalization doesn't mean anything. What we need is legal regulation because we need taxes. The war on drugs has not stopped anyone from taking drugs. It's very odd to say that the government should be in the business of selling things like cocaine and opioid-based products, but right now those things are being sold and the money's just going to cartels. The money's going to pay for people to smuggle drugs across borders. It's being paid for people to be violent enforcers. If the source of the drugs was coming from somewhere else, then a lot of that money that's going to the cartels is going to the prevention of or skirting interdiction could be spent on treatment and prevention. Okay, it's not. We're not going to see a rash increase in drug addicts. We've already have that. What we would see is the ability to effectively address that through education and through prevention and through treatment. We also have to look at alternative sentencing. Prison isn't for everyone. Jail isn't for everyone. Incarceration isn't for everyone. White-collar criminals, for example, there's no benefit in putting them in prison. The benefit for punishing individuals like that is just fine them extremely heavily so that we can offer restitution to their victims, or so that we can deter the behavior in the future by addressing the goal of what they're trying to do. The goal of a lot of high-level white-collar offending is to make money. So if you make it not profitable, then that addresses the behavior. Incarceration is not a solution to every criminal justice issue. We also have to look at what people are doing when they're coming out of these facilities, if they are incarcerated. Ways to ease them back into society, educational programs, job placement programs. That could be something like working and doing working for the state, working for the local government, figuring out some way to give these people coming out of prison skills that will allow them to be, if not successful, at least functional in society. Reducing the availability of firearms. Again, doesn't mean taking firearms from anyone else. It means things like requiring a license to purchase one, requiring a license to carry a firearm, requiring paperwork to sell it to someone. Right now in Georgia, I have several privately owned firearms in my home. I could go sell them to anyone without any kind of paperwork. I'm supposed to ask them if they're a felon, but private party to private party, there's almost no regulations about that, which is scary. We need to be able to track the guns, to have accountability, to make sure that the guns aren't ending up in the hands of people where they shouldn't be. Shouldn't be restricting people's ability to purchase firearms legally, but we just want to be able to reduce the ability of the black market transactions. And I assure you, the NRA does not care about gun owners. The NRA cares about gun manufacturers' ability to sell more guns. They have pushed out all of the moderates in that organization in the 1990s, and they are basically just a media company at this point. They make money off clicks, they make money off the videos they post on the internet, and they make money that's donated to them from gun manufacturers. They do not have the best interest of gun owners in any of their operations. And it's unfortunate because that has not always been the history of that organization, but it is today a shell of what it formerly was. We also need to have an increase in community policing, bridging the gaps between the police and the community, making it unnecessary for a community to riot when something happens. Having open dialogue, having open lines of communication between community members and police officers is essential to avoid civil unrest, to make people feel like they're heard, and to have those effective changes take place. Mesner and Rosenfeld also argue that we need to sort of change very integral, central aspects of our American society, changing the social structure and the ethos of the country. What do we value? Is it just going to be about money? That's not working. It's not working to make that be the ultimate means to every end. We need to support advancements in understandings and not look at change as something that's trying to create upheaval in our comfortable lives, but looking for positive change, ways to better include all community members in decisions and what's happening. The multifaceted approach that it's going to take to better align our society is also going to be needed specifically within the criminal justice system, and our approach to crime. It can't just be to punish. When someone commits a crime, the first instinct that we should have should be why did that happen, not how many years can we give this person. We need to address why it happened. Now, the eventual answer might be that we need to give that person a lot of years in the incarcerated setting. But just doing that doesn't help us to understand why it happened and stop it from happening in the future. Conservatives are off base. Liberals are off base. No one's really addressing why things are happening. And part of that is because there's a sort of a disjunct between who those people are. Who are the people that are making the decisions? Even the people that are saying that they speak for these communities, these impoverished communities, these areas where crime is taking place. Oftentimes they don't live there. They're not seeing that on a daily basis. They're not seeing they're not having to live the hardships of people in those areas. So they're making assumptions about what what is best for them, and they're really not listening to what the people, what those streets are saying. So there's not bad people. It's not just the bad social conditions. It's focusing on flawed American ideals and what we're asking these people to do, what we're expecting them to do, what our measures of success are. The enemy comes from within the dominant U.S. culture of overvaluing the economy. It's going to require a long-term strategy. There's going to be short-term setbacks. But again, those setbacks are opportunities to learn, to prevent them from happening again in the future. It's unfortunate when bad things happen, when the police screw up, when community members do dumb things, but we have to be able to take from those experiences whatever we can to be able to better address them in the future. So again, we have to take steps to strengthen the social structure, weaken the criminogenic qualities of American culture, again, those access to guns, the code of the streets mentality, the drug trade, and then our general response to crime being over punitiveness. Two major things we can do to address that: vitalize families, schools, reform the political system for the better of the people instead of just it being a lucrative business. Implementing cultural regeneration to address the problems that have happened. Putting businesses in areas where we have grocery store deserts instead of putting Dollar Trees. Putting a store that's going to have fresh produce at a reasonable price instead of selling damn near expired Kool-Aid packets that you're going to see again at a Dollar General or something like that. Showing that the system, that the government cares about all of these people is very important to giving them community pride and giving them the understanding that they are cared about. Increased family leave, providing daycare, after-school programs, pro-family economic policies, making sure that people have the ability to balance their schedules with work and home, reinvigorating marriage. The concept of marriage, again, I'm not talking about that in a religious context. We're talking about that in and from a governmental sense, basically a partnership between two people for the advancement of both of their lives. It's easier when you only have to pay one power bill for two people, one internet bill. You can split the food bill. You can do a lot more with two people working together than one person working alone. Reforming the schools, getting rid of the business model, that it's just a means to an end. Hopefully in this class you learned something. You might have come to this class just needing the elective credit or needing the required CJ course credit. But I try to structure this class so maybe you actually do learn something that you can then apply in your lives, because everything that we've talked about in this class was relevant when it was written, and it's too damn relevant now. We have to have more review of the school's process, how the schools are operating. Just having the money that they get tied to some bullshit standardized tests is not effective. If the school is being effective for the students that are there, that should be enough. They shouldn't have to live up to some imaginary bar that's going to be really easy for schools in East Cobb or in Gwinnett County to satisfy. But when you have schools in South Fulton that don't have textbooks, or schools in DeKalb County that are worried about, are they going to be able to heat the building? It puts undue strain on the system. Reforming the criminal justice system is going to take a multifaceted approach that, again, we've talked about over the entire course of the semester. What we want the system to do, how we want the system to address criminal behavior. All of these things are going to take re-examination. Just because it's the way that we've done things for the past 200 years doesn't mean anything. It means absolutely nothing right now. We need a complete re-examine. Everyone needs to reapply for their jobs. That's one of the things they say was effective in Camden, New Jersey. The defund the police movement. They basically made all of the police officers reapply for their jobs. Everyone in the criminal justice system needs to reapply for their job. There's a lot of bloat and there's a lot of rot in the system right now. And we need to figure out a way to address both of those things. One way to do that is by looking at these issues from non-criminal justice perspectives. Looking at drug crime as a public health issue. Looking at juvenile offending from a social work aspect, and why are these things happening? All of these things, again, are going to be necessary to make the system in any sort of operational state. This is a chart sort of addressing one of the major economic issues, and this is not to say that we should be implementing some sort of socialism or communism in the United States, but there is too much of a gap between the top and the bottom. A model like what Costco does is very effective. The CEO of that company can only make 10 times what the lowest employee makes. Now, that's not going to work in every system, in every job. There are people that do hard work that changes the world, and they should be paid accordingly. But there are too many people that work in these imagined positions in major corporations when their existence in that structure is taking money away from the lower levels. It's making it impossible for people to have a living wage. Um, that's something that needs to be addressed going forward. And again, that's something that should be valued. It should be valued that if you own a business, or if you're an executive at a business, that you pay your employees what they deserve and what they need to live. Not that you've got the biggest corporate bonus of anyone in your field. There should be some societal benefit to helping the people that work for you. But the problem is that there's no direct incentive for that. And in the system that we have in place, the economic system that we have in place, we are only based on direct financial incentives. And we have to get away from that. And that's going to take a lot of people changing their view of the world. It's going to take less people than you would think, but it's going to take people that are going to have to give up the power. And that's a very rare class of person that can do that. When George Washington finished his second term in office, a lot of people wanted him to remain the president for life, but he didn't, because he said he thought it would set a bad example. I don't know if he said that. I wasn't around. They didn't have recordings, but he gave up power when he had the ability to hold it. That's a rare quality, and it's a rare quality that we need to seek out to address the issues that we are facing right now as a country, as a society. So this is the last PowerPoint. Like I said, I hope you learned something in this course beyond just what you needed to take the exams. I hope the videos that we watched made you laugh sometimes, made you mad at other times. I think it's very important to get those range of emotions, because those things that piss you off are those things that make you laugh, are the things that you remember. And there's a lot of things that we've talked about in the course of the semester that you need to remember. That if you remember them and you get other people to remember them, that's how we start to change what we're doing and what we're all experiencing. So the only thing left will be the final next week. Please take the final next week. If you don't take the final next week, you will mathematically fail the course. So please take the final next week. Please keep the textbook for this class. I know there's the temptation to always sell it back. This is one, though, that you can use, or that you could give to someone else, and you could maybe help to change their views, and let them be a part of this solution that we're hopefully going to start to make. So this is the first time that I've done this class all online with these video lectures. I would like to be back in the classroom. That's not the case for right now. Hopefully that will be the case soon. So I thank you all for being a part of this academic experiment. And I hope that, again, that you learned something that you can use and apply, if not on a daily basis, at least frequently in your lives after this course.